though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned.
It was Stephen Miller, senior White House policy advisor back in February 2017, making the case that Donald Trump's immigration policy, specifically his Muslim ban, which they had to withdraw because it was unlawful, shall not be questioned. That is very much on brand for him. Stephen Miller is I guess you could politely say, a hardliner who has single-handedly worked to craft a draconian immigration policy, destroy the Department of Homeland Security as any kind of government institution with independent integrity, and where you're seeing the damage of his ceaseless meddling firsthand in the policies being carried out. CNN reporting we are on track to admit 0 refugees in the month of October, not one. And that comes as the migration picture is more dire than ever. New York Times reporting the detention of children trying to cross the southwest border is now at a record high. Here with me now, NBC national security and justice reporter Julia Ainsley, who's broken a number of immigration stories. Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington, herself an immigrant and former immigrant rights activist. Julia, let me start with you just on that final note. My understanding is this uptick in unaccompanied minors who are being apprehended and then put into detention is because of the, quote, remain in Mexico policy. There's tens of thousands of essentially stranded asylum seekers in Mexico getting so desperate they're sending their kids. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, that's right. There were even some stories where the parents weren't sure where their children had gone and they had left and kind of had to abandon ship in order to try to get into the United States. And I'll point things out. In Mexico, a unaccompanied child is actually seen as a fast track for deportation. Their laws there to protect children from being trafficked mean that anytime they see an unaccompanied child, they have a very small chance of getting asylum and a much larger chance of being deported back to their home country. So as soon as they leave their family, they have to try to get into the United States as quickly as possible. Things are very dangerous for them. And we saw this happening this same time last year in Tijuana when we started seeing what was called metering. That's when they only allowed in a few people a day to claim asylum. Now you have this on a whole scale level. People in different parts along the border are being sent back into Mexico where they face what looks like refugee camps, incredibly unsafe conditions. A lot of times they're targeted. These are not towns that were set up to really provide any kind of safe harbor. In fact, the whole point of the policy, Chris, and this gets into Stephen Miller's strategy, was to make it so arduous for anyone to claim asylum that they would give up on their cases while waiting there. So now you have children who are fleeing from their families just to try to get into the United States and have a chance at life.
Congresswoman, one immigration lawyer told me that the Stephen Miller and President Trump have effectively destroyed the statutory basis for asylum, that this is enshrined in American law, and using the return to Mexico policy, the way they've implemented metering, it essentially no longer exists at the southern border. Is that an accurate characterization?
Well, it's true that that's what they're trying to do. Some of those cases are still held up in court because we do have statutory right to asylum, both in our domestic laws, but also in our international human rights treaties that we are signatory to. But Julia is right that what they're doing is trying to discourage people over and over again in more and more draconian ways. So first they tried it with family separation. They were actually separating children from their mothers and fathers. You covered that. A lot of people covered that. That is still going on, but in different ways. Then they tried saying, we're going to put a ban on asylum. The court said, no, you can't do that. They have cut refugee admissions to 18,000, by the way, from 110,000. So they're effectively trying to eliminate every legal way that people have to seek refuge in the United States.
I want to follow up on that and come back to you, Julia. The refugees, there's two ways to come in, right? If you're fleeing oppression or some tyranny, right? You can come and declare yourself an asylum seeker at the border, and they say, no, that's chaotic and it's dangerous. You can't do that. And then you could do it through the refugee process, which is very well vetted, extremely orderly. You apply from abroad. They have essentially squeezed that off, too. What does it tell you that they've gone after both of those?
Well, so, I don't know if you were directing that. Oh, sorry. Were you directing that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep.
So what they literally have had in mind, and this is Stephen Miller's longtime plan, is to cut legal immigration to zero. And so they have tried to take away family migration. They have obviously started deporting people that are in the United States using terrible programs like secure who can increase enforcement of people across the country and kick them out. And then at the border, they've stopped in every way possible. I was in those courts, those MPP courts. They're called Migrant Protection Protocol, which is a complete misnomer because there's really no due process. There's no protection. These people are being bussed over from Mexico, and then they're ending refugees. So their goal is to stop even legal immigration into the United States.
Julia, quickly, DHS just seems completely dysfunctional at this moment. What happens to this agency next?
It's a good question. I mean, we've looked at who the president could possibly appoint. And Katie Tur and I reported last week that one of the people that was being looked at, even just as an interim, was a man named Chad Wolf, who was one of the people who proposed all the logistical ways that they could separate families. But he is not seen as hard enough, Chris. So right now, the president is not only looking at who aligns with Stephen Miller, but who will go on TV and to defend his policies. Someone a lot like Ken Cuccinelli, but for all the reasons you laid out, Ken Cuccinelli does not seem confirmable. So we'll see now if the president wants to walk around all of the rules that are normally in place for federal vacancies to try to get who he wants in place. But I'll tell you, from people I speak to, it's already been chaotic. They have policies that are enacted through a tweet before they actually get a memo on how to implement it. And courts are holding things up every day. They have to figure out how they're going to carry out these policies. Not having someone either confirmed or even in an acting position is hard for them.
Julia Ainsley and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, thank you both. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.